At 9:47 a.m. on April 25, 1945, Major William Davey of the 303rd Bombardment Group watched through scratched plexiglass as 316 Lancaster bombers released 1,232 tons of high explosive ordnance onto the Bavarian Alps below. The Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat, sat centred in his bomb site. Davey was 31, had flown 47 missions, survived 2 engine fires. His younger brother died at Normandy. Now he pressed the release. The payload fell. 4.5 tons of British fury dropped toward the most photographed house in Nazi Germany. The complex had been Hitler's sanctuary for 14 years. Now it would burn. The Berghof wasn't just a house. It was the nerve centre of Nazi Germany's leadership, perched 3,081 feet above sea level on the Obersalzberg mountain. Hitler purchased the original structure in 1933 with royalties from Mein Kampf. He called it Haus Wachenfeld. By 1936, architect Alois Degano transformed it into a massive alpine fortress. The Great Hall featured a window 26 feet wide, retractable, the largest piece of glass ever manufactured in Germany. Cost 650,000 Reichsmarks. Beyond it, the Untersberg mountain, where legend said Charlemagne slept, waiting to restore German glory. Hitler spent more time at the Berghof than in Berlin. Half his chancellorship, roughly 1,094 days between 1933 and 1944, played out in these alpine rooms. The Munich Agreement that carved up Czechoslovakia, signed 30 miles north after meetings here. The decision to invade Poland, discussed in the Great Hall. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain visited in September 1938, walked these corridors, saw the window. Mussolini came. Franco came. Every major Nazi leader made the pilgrimage. Goering built his own estate 500 yards away. Bormann constructed a vast complex of barracks, bunkers, and tunnels beneath the mountain. The surrounding Obersalzberg became a fortified zone, 9 square miles of restricted territory, guard towers every 200 yards, flak batteries, machine gun nests, underground barracks for 2,000 SS troops, a network of tunnels connecting every major building. Total construction cost, 185 million Reichsmarks. More than Germany spent on most tank divisions. This wasn't just protection. It was a statement. The Führer lived like an emperor on a mountain throne. But by April 1945, the empire was collapsing. Soviet forces pushed from the east. American and British armies drove from the west. Berlin was encircled. Hitler remained in his bunker under the Reich's chancellery, 400 miles north. The Berghof sat empty. Eva Braun's servants maintained the property. SS guards patrolled. Fresh flowers arrived weekly for rooms nobody occupied. The great window, that engineering marvel, reflected spring sunlight onto abandoned chairs. Allied intelligence knew the complex's value, not military value, symbolic value. Eisenhower's staff compiled detailed reconnaissance photographs. Aerial surveys mapped every structure. 12 major buildings, the Berghof itself, Bormann's house, the SS barracks, the Platterhof Hotel for visiting dignitaries, the tea house perched higher on the mountain, the elevator shaft descending through solid rock to the Eagle's Nest, the peak retreat built for Hitler's 50th birthday. Cost of the Eagle's Nest alone, 30 million Reichsmarks. Hitler visited it fewer than 14 times, hated the altitude. The bombing order came from Arthur Harris, Commander-in-Chief of RAF Bomber Command. Target designation, Obersalzberg Leadership Complex. Harris called it a morale operation. Translation, psychological warfare. Destroy the symbols, break the spirit. Some historians argue it was revenge. Harris had watched German bombers level British cities. Now British bombers would erase Hitler's mountain sanctuary. The 318 Lancasters approached from the north at 19,000 feet. No fighter escort needed. The Luftwaffe was finished. Germany had maybe 200 operational fighters left, scattered, grounded by fuel shortages. The Lancasters flew in broad daylight. Anti-aircraft fire rose from the valley but fell short. The bombers droned overhead untouched. Bavarian villagers watched from Berchtesgaden below, recognizing the sound, that deep rolling thunder of Merlin engines. The first bombs hit at 9:48 a.m. High explosive blockbusters designed to collapse structures, then incendiaries to burn what remained. The Berghof took multiple direct hits. The Great Window, that symbol of Nazi architectural ambition, shattered into 10,000 fragments. The roof caved. The second floor collapsed into the first. Fire erupted in the east wing where Eva Braun's bedroom suite once held her monogrammed linens. The walls held initially, reinforced concrete 3 feet thick in places, but the internal structure failed. Beams snapped. Marble staircases cracked. The grand hall where Hitler hosted foreign leaders became an inferno. If you want to see what the SS did next, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this one. Subscribe if you haven't already. Bormann's house burned completely. The SS barracks complex, built to house 500 men, took 14 direct hits. The Platterhof Hotel, requisitioned from its original Jewish owner in 1936, collapsed. Only the tunnel system survived. Buried under 30 feet of granite, the bunkers remained intact. Inside, filing cabinets full of documents, wine cellars, storage rooms, an entire subterranean world the bombs couldn't reach. The bombing lasted 11 minutes. When the Lancasters turned north and the smoke cleared, the Obersalzberg looked like a volcanic crater. SS Colonel Bernhard Frank, commander of the remaining security detachment, surveyed the damage from a tunnel entrance. 47 years old, party member since 1931, he'd guarded this complex for 8 years. Now it smouldered. His orders were clear. Nothing falls intact to the enemy. The SS spent the next 12 days methodically destroying what the bombs missed. They poured gasoline through the Berghof's broken windows. Set fires in every room. The Reichsadler, the bronze eagle that once crowned the entrance, was torn down, cut into pieces, buried in the forest. Furniture dragged from tunnels and burned. Art looted from occupied territories and stored in the basement. Paintings, sculptures, tapestries, either stolen by fleeing SS officers or torched. Frank's men carried off anything valuable. What they couldn't carry, they sabotaged. They drilled holes in boilers, smashed generators, collapsed tunnel entrances with explosives. On May 4th, 1945, American forces of the 7th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, approached from the north. Private First Class Herbert Moore, 22, from Indiana, was in the lead squad. They expected resistance. The intelligence briefing described reinforced positions, possible last-stand defenders. Instead, they found ruins and smoke. No gunfire. The SS had withdrawn 3 days earlier, slipping south toward Austria. Moore and his squad entered the Berghof's remains through a collapsed wall. Inside, destruction. The great hall stood roofless, open to the sky. Rain had turned ash to black sludge. The famous window frame jutted from rubble like broken teeth. But the structure's bones remained. Walls, stairwells, the massive fireplace, imported Italian marble, stood intact, smoke-stained but unbroken, and the tunnels. Moore's squad found a blown entrance, crawled through, discovered the underground network, miles of corridors, rooms with electric lights still functioning. The power generator, hidden in a separate chamber, still hummed. Word spread fast. By May 6th, American soldiers swarmed the site. Not combat troops securing a position, souvenir hunters, troops from rear echelon units, drivers, clerks, cooks. They descended on the Obersalzberg like locusts. The 101st Airborne Division arrived to establish order, found chaos instead. Soldiers crowded into tunnels, emerging with arms full of loot. Nazi flags, silverware stamped with eagles and swastikas, letters with Hitler's signature, photo albums, champagne bottles from the wine cellar, an officer's dress dagger sold for $50 to another soldier. Nobody stopped it. Officers participated. A colonel took Eva Braun's underwear as a trophy for his wife. The systematic looting of the Berghof lasted 6 weeks. French troops replaced the Americans in June, continued the pillaging. British soldiers visited, filled their packs. German civilians from Berchtesgaden crept up the mountain at night, scavenged. By mid-July, the complex was picked clean. The tunnel stood empty except for broken furniture and scattered papers. Above ground, the Berghof's walls remained, but every fixture was gone. Door handles, light switches, copper pipes torn from walls, even the toilets smashed and removed piece by piece. What remained became a problem, a burnt, looted shell, but still recognizable, still Hitler's house. Already, curious locals wandered up. Allied military government officials worried it would become a shrine. Neo-Nazis might make pilgrimages. The symbolism was too powerful. The Bavarian state government, newly reformed under American occupation, agreed. The ruins must disappear, but bureaucracy moved slowly. Years passed. The Berghof sat there, weathering. Rain collapsed more of the roof. Frost cracked the marble. Weeds grew through the great hall floor. Photographers came, journalists, historians documenting the end of an era. They captured the decay, the shattered window frame against mountain sky, the fireplace standing alone in wreckage. These images circulated. Articles described what once was, what now remained. The photographs bothered occupation authorities. Each picture was propaganda, not for Nazism necessarily, but for remembrance, for the idea that this place mattered. In 1952, 7 years after Germany's surrender, the Bavarian government issued demolition orders. Engineers arrived with explosives. They'd learned from the war, precision charges carefully placed. On April 30th, ironically the anniversary of Hitler's suicide, they detonated. The Berghof's walls came down. The fireplace collapsed. The foundation was excavated, filled with rubble, covered with soil and rock. The Platterhof Hotel ruins received similar treatment. Bormann's house was flattened. Every structure above ground was systematically erased. The mountainside returned to forest. Grass grew. Trees took root in what had been Hitler's driveway, but the tunnels remained, buried, sealed with concrete barriers, but intact. The Bavarian government considered flooding them, decided against it. Too expensive. Too difficult. They sealed the entrances and left them. Beneath the forest floor, the bunkers sit unchanged. The lights are dark now. The generators stopped decades ago. But the rooms remain. The filing cabinets, emptied but still standing. The ventilation shafts. The concrete walls with their stenciled signs in Gothic script. A ghost complex underground, preserved by accident. The site stayed abandoned for decades. A parking lot was built on part of the footprint. Documentation center proposals were rejected repeatedly. Too controversial. Former Nazi officials still lived in Bavaria. Veterans' organizations objected. Not until 1999 did serious discussion begin. The documentation center Obersalzberg finally opened in 1999, built deliberately away from the Berghof's exact location. The center tells the complex's history. Photographs line the walls. Timelines explain who visited, when, why. A small section of tunnel is accessible, restored to show what the underground network looked like. Tourists can walk through, touch the concrete walls, read the interpretive signs. The Berghof's foundation remains buried. Archaeologists have proposed excavation. The Bavarian government refuses. The official position, better forgotten. But hikers know where it was. Local guides point out the spot. If you know what to look for, subtle depressions in the earth, fragments of concrete exposed by erosion, you can trace the outline. The Great Hall was here. The window faced that direction. Eva Braun's room sat there. The knowledge persists despite the physical erasure. Approximately 300,000 people visit the documentation center annually. They come from everywhere. Historians, students, World War II veterans in their 90s wanting to see where decisions were made, curiosity seekers, neo-Nazis occasionally, who the staff carefully monitors. The visitors stand at the viewing platform, look out at the mountains Hitler saw. The Untersberg still dominates the view. Charlemagne still sleeps inside, according to legend. The landscape is unchanged. What changed was everything built upon it. The looting matters more than it seems. Thousands of historical artifacts vanished. Letters, diaries, photo albums, official documents, scattered to private collections worldwide. They surface occasionally in estate sales. Museums acquire pieces. The Library of Congress holds Eva Braun's photo albums, stolen by a soldier, sold years later. Hitler's personal effects appear in auction catalogues. A napkin from the Berghof, authenticated, sold for $6,800 in 2019. The silverware, the china, all marked with eagles and swastikas, all taken in May 1945. The dispersal makes historical reconstruction difficult. We know what happened at the Berghof through photographs and witness accounts. The physical evidence is scattered across continents. The Obersalzberg represents something specific in the architecture of totalitarianism, not the functional brutality of concentration camps, not the industrial scale of weapons factories, but the personal grandeur, the dictator's private sanctuary designed to project power and taste. Stalin had his dachas. Mao had Zhongnanhai. Saddam Hussein built 80 palaces. They all understood the same principle. Surround yourself with visible wealth and security. Demonstrate that you've transcended ordinary limitation. The Berghof was Hitler's demonstration. The window, the tunnels, the eagle's nest perched absurdly high. All of it said, I command reality itself. And reality answered with 318 bombers at 9:47 a.m. on April 25, 1945. Today, grass grows where the Great Hall stood. Pine trees shade the area. The parking lot is modest. The documentation center building is deliberately plain. No architectural drama, no statements. Inside, the exhibits are clinical. Facts, dates, photographs. The message is clear. Remember what happened, but grant it no mystique. The Berghof was a building. Hitler was a man. Both are gone. What remains is responsibility. The responsibility to remember why this place mattered, what decisions were made here, what suffering resulted. The tunnel tours last 45 minutes. Guides lead groups through restored sections. The concrete walls are bare, lit by modern LEDs. Visitors touch the walls. Some cry. Others take photographs. The guides explain. Here was storage. There, sleeping quarters for SS. Guards. That chamber held communications equipment. This is where they sat while the bombs fell overhead. The acoustics are strange underground. Voices echo, footsteps carry. It feels like a tomb, and it is. Not for bodies, but for an ideology that died here in stages. First the bombs, then the fires, then the demolition, then the decades of intentional forgetting.